Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are diving into something every developer, meaning you, working with .NET 8 and Docker needs to know. And that is how to connect a .NET 8 web API running in a Docker container to a local Microsoft SQL Server database, meaning installed on your computer. Imagine you are developing a microservices architecture and each service or each API is isolated in its own Docker container. But here's the catch: you need to access your local SQL Server database without compromising the container's isolation. How do you bridge that gap? That is exactly what we'll be covering today. Connecting your microservices to a local SQL database installed is very useful. It actually centralizes the database, and it also enables you to manage the data in on your computer. So you need not to run database images in every container of your services. Okay, so you can just have a centralized database in your local, and you can connect your images or your API images running in Docker to it, and it's going to work. So let's see how we can work with this. Now, we are not actually much concentrated or focusing on establishing or creating your CRUD operation or doing a whole lot of stuff in our API. What you want to do here is you want to actually have a simple setup, and at the end of the day, we want to run that using the SQL Server, and we want to run this setup as an image in Docker. You want to focus on these two sections. Okay, so let's see. Now, make sure you have your Visual Studio latched. So from that, let's create a project. So we're going to choose Web API, and let's give it a name. Local API image with local database, right? So demo API image with local database. That is the name of my project. So I'm going to click on next to get this project created. And here, before I click on create, let's include container support, and we need a Docker file. So let's have this project created. Once we have our project created, we want to actually have CRUD on product. Okay, so maybe this is what you're going to be doing, but you know, they support, we can have access to a scaffolded feature to create a CRUD easily. So let's see how we can work with that. Now let's create a model first. So let's put up maybe a class, and now with this, let's give it any name at all. So this is going to be a model, a product, which has some properties that you can add. So maybe we're going to have an ID. Then aside from that, we can have name. Maybe this is going to be name. Okay, then let's have one more. Maybe there's going to be quantity. Okay, so let's assume this is a model, and we have everything set. Let's use this scaffolded feature, which will make our work easy. So right click on the project in here. Let's see, click on add the new scaffolded item. Let's click on that, and in here we want to create an API which will have all the CRUD endpoint. So create read, and you can see create CRUD endpoint given a model class and a database context. We can go ahead and create our own context here, so don't worry. And it's going to minimize API scaffolded. So let's see. Now with this, click on add, and now with this, let's use our product. This is our model endpoint, so we can create our endpoint, and that will be product endpoint. So product endpoint, you can click on OK. Then for DB context, since you're not having anyone, we're going to be creating one. So this this product DB context. Then click on add. Then our SQL, you want to be using SQL Server purposely for this, so let's make that one selected. Click on add, and let's wait while it's installing some packages, and aside from that, it's going to create our endpoint for us. So let's wait. Oh, amazing. So you can see that we have our endpoint created beautifully for us. We have it in here. Now when you check our solution, we have a data folder created automatically. In that we have our product DB context class that we created, or we selected, or we added. And then like you see, we have a DB set, which taking our product model that we created. All right, now the next thing to do here is we have our endpoint as well, and that's going to be our controller. Since it's going to be using a minimal API, we have this controller here. And now with this API, we can see we have the name, and here it is get all list. Here we are making get by ID, we're making update, then we're making create, and now delete. So you can see here we're having all our card operation created automatically using that feature. That's amazing. Very, very easy. Yeah, so you not to worry yourself, do a lot. You can just use that feature, and there you go. All right, so the next thing to do here is we need to, maybe let's rebuild this project. After that, we're going to add migration to create a database first. Aside from that, you see it has also installed some default packages. When you check the packages, it has all the necessary packages that it needs. Yeah, so we need not to install any additional package. Now that we have this set, let's see if build, yeah, succeeded. Let's go and have our database migrated. But before that, I want to change this to local. I don't want to be using this because my server here is a local DB, so I can make it as local. Then database here, it is a product DB, so I want to get rid of all this. Then trusted connection, and now let's have trust server certificate, set that one to true. Okay, so that is what we need. When we check our program.cs file, you can see that connection string has been registered nicely in here. Let's go and add migration. So add migration, you make sure we have API selected. So add as migration, give it a name. Yeah, so the file has been created. Now let's take that file into action by using this update database. Yeah, so the file also created. So when you check from our SQL Server, that's the SQL Server Object Explorer, you can find that in View. Then in here for our SQL, there's my server databases, and here you can see that I have a product DB database that I just created. Great. So now that we have this, what's the next thing to do? We can run this and then check this app. Okay. So let's make sure you have our HTTP selected, and aside from that, let's connect to our API. Oh, okay, so it's ready now. We can go ahead and add product. So this is get product, and it should return array, empty array, meaning it has connected to our database. Okay, so it's still loading. Let's wait and see the results from this execution. Well, we have it. So we can go and add one product. Let's maintain the default values. Click on execute. Oh, we have it in here. So we can go ahead and now execute this. And you can see we have it. Now that we have this API running successfully, what the next thing to do, we need to build the image of this project so we can run it in Docker container. Okay, so first of all, you have to make sure you have your Docker desktop installed. If not, you can go ahead and now install that from Docker site. So maybe you can just come to the link in here and I'll download this for desktop for Windows. If you want any other version, desktop, Docker desktop, that is a docs.docker.com/desktop. Then you're going to have access to them here. You can download for Mac, Windows, and Linux. You can get them here. Okay, so make sure you launch your Docker desktop as soon as you're done installing. You launch it up. Okay, so when you launch it, this is what you're going to have a look at. Currently we have nothing running in a container, so we're going to run this in here. Okay, but we know in order for us to communicate our image inside our Docker running the container to our looker, we cannot be using this looker in there. So we can decide to specify the IP address of this computer, and in that, you know what to do. You know, window key plus R, you're gonna have this command, then we type in, that's a command prompt. So now with this command prompt, you know, we can specify our IP config, and now here it can give us access to the IP address. So you can just go in there and then grab your local IP address and use it in there. But aside from that, what's the next thing that you need to do? You can also use a mask to represent that. What is this mask? Let me show you how you can do that. So let's make a copy of this, and now let's comment this, and in here from a product DB context, we need to set this. So for our server, instead of this, we're going to remove this local, and now passing this is a mask. So host.docker.internal. Okay, so it is similar to your IP address. Then aside from that, specify your ports. So you know, SQL is running a default port of 1433, so we need to specify this port in here. But you know, when we're connecting to a database, we are using Windows Authentication. So let me open my SSMS, that is a SQL Server Management Studio. Make sure you open yours, run as an administrator. So when you run that, you know, defaultly most of us have been using Windows Authentication, and here it is coming out from your Windows security. But you know, working with Docker, it does not support that. So what it needs to support here, or what you need to do, is you configure the SQL Server Authentication. I just made a video recently on that, how you can make this work. So if you haven't checked the video out, maybe I'll leave the link in the video description, so you can go ahead and now check it out in there. Now when you have our SQL SSMS open like this, normally we use this Windows Authentication, but in this case I'm not going to be using that. So all that we need to do here is we need to use the SQL Server Authentication, which has a login as SA, system administrator, and the password as root. So with this password, and I click on Trust Server Certificate, and I click on Connect, and this is going to get connected to my database, and that is what I have in here. Okay, so with this database, if I click on databases, and you can see we have our product DB context in here, and now with this is able to, or it to be made easy for our image to get connected to this. So the credential that we have specified, we're going to be using this credential in here. So instead of having just transit connection and this certificate, we can remove this connection, or you can even maintain it. And aside from that, we can use user ID. So user ID, it is an SA. Then we have a password. The password here, it is root. So this is a password that I use. Okay, so you have to make sure you have this connection set up before this can able to communicate from your API to your local database. Great. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and build this. After this has been built, we can go ahead and now in here we need to create when you check in here, a Docker file has been created or added to this automatically, and it is exposing to 8080, right? And now we have an 8081, so it is exposing to port, but never mind, we can maintain this and use the 8080 port in here to connect. Okay, so the next thing to do here is we need to create a Docker Compose file, and that's what we're going to be using to run this. But before this, let's build this project first. So let's click our package manager console, and in here we're going to have a Docker build. Then let's give it a tag, a name. So here I'm going to say this is Netcode-Hub. Then I'm going to say this is my local API, and I'm going to have version 1, then dash. So it means that's a dot, meaning everything. So you're going to build all. Now click on this, and now this is going to build this project. But before it does that, there's going to be an issue. The reason is this Docker file shouldn't be part of the project, it should be out. So I click on this and I go to open folder in File Explorer. So you can see that from here we have a Docker file. We're going to cut this from here. Then where we have the solution, we're going to paste this here. Okay, so now that we are done with that, when you go and execute this command again, it's going to now build this. So let's wait and see while it builds this project. Now it builds as an image, and after the building we're going to see that in here. So when you go to images, you're going to be having the package here after the building is done, and that could be, or that should be, Netcode-Hub, and now the name of the project, that's the local API. So let's wait and see what the building is so going on. Alright, so you can see that here it is done, and when we check our Docker desktop, you can see we have it here, Netcode-Hub, then local API version 1 for the tag, and that is the size. Created 2 seconds ago, meaning it is now, and it is unused. Okay, so how do we use this? Now we have that API built in here. We need to create a Docker Compose file so we can be running this image. Let's right click here, and now let's click on add new item, and now let's search for YAML file, and now with this we're going to create this as Docker Compose. So once you have our file created, the first thing I need to do here is let's specify our services. So now with this services, let's say this is a web API because it is still web API. Let's have our build section, and now with this build section, you want to specify the context of this. So here, the web API is under the service. Now build is under the web API. Then when you go to the context, it's also under the build. Then with this context, you are referring to everything in here. Let's specify a Docker file. So this is a Docker file, and Docker file here, what is the name? It is Netcode-Hub / we have a local API. So also provide the name that you use. You can cross check from your Docker desktop the name that you use, Netcode-Hub and local API. Okay, so now that we have this, you have to make v1 from the version 1. Then under the build section, let's specify our image. So what's going to be the image? So this is going to be the image. And now here it is Docker file. So this is Docker file. This Docker file is a file that we just copied or we move outside the solution. Okay, so that's the name of the file, the Docker file. Then let's give this container name. Now this container name should come under the build. So we're going to say that this is container name, and we're saying this is web API. Then let's specify port. Now the port here, we want to make sure our Docker container is exposing two ports, 8080 and 8081. 8080 for HTTP, 8081 for HTTPS. Let's focus on the HTTP. So we're going to say that we want to map this port to maybe, well, okay, so let's say this is 7000, and we want to map this port to the 8080, that is the internal port. Okay, let's specify our environment. So this is our environment, and now with this environment we need to specify two things in here. The first thing we need to specify is an ASP.NET Core environment, and on this environment it is in development stage. Then we need to specify our connection string. So with this, we say this are connection strings, and now the name that we use was product DB. We can go ahead and cross check from our connection string is a product DB context. So let's grab that, and now let's paste this here. Then in that, the setting that we use is we need to go and grab same thing and now paste it in here. So we have our server, our role, password, that's our credential, and we have a database name in here. Okay, we need to create a network so this can run on. So with that, let's put this network next. So here we are saying that under this, we're saying this is network. And now with this networks, okay, let's remove this. Okay, and now here we're going to say that maybe let's give it a name as my network. Okay, and after that, let's specify this network. Okay, so we're going to say that there's networks, and now with this networks, I think let's leave some space. With this networks, we specify my network, so we need to bring it down here. So my network, and now this network, we need to specify driver, and it is just going to bridge them together when you connect them together. So we specify it as bridge. Great, so now that we have this, we need to also move this out of this file. So the same place that we're going to move this Docker file, then where we have the Docker file for the image, we're going to paste this compose in here. After we are done with this, we have to go ahead and run that. So let's say when we type in ls, we're going to list all including this Docker file that we just added. And let's say there's a Docker compose app. So we're going to run this, and since we have this in our image already, it's going to create a service, create a container, and it's going to be running on the port of 7000 to the 8080. Okay, so with this, we can go ahead and access that. Let's open our browser. Then in here, let's have our local host, which will be running on 7000. Then we have our Swagger, and it seems like this is not, you're not having this app here. HTTP, and there you go. So you can see, look, HTTP localhost, and the port here is 5000. Now let's see if we can connect to the database using the configuration that we did. Now let's check it out. Yeah, and now we have it. So you can see that we're having this from our API. You can see our API is not running here, but image is running, and we have that. I believe by now you have a solid understanding on how to connect your .NET 8 Web API running in Docker to a local SQL Server database. This setup will not only streamline your development process, but it's also going to prepare you for a real-world deployment scenario where Docker and SQL Server coexist. So stay tuned, because mastering this will take your development workflow to the next level. Thank you for watching this, and hopefully I'm going to catch you up in the next video.